back to the Recovering Out Loud podcast. I'm your host, Charles Van Loucks. Today, we have a very special guest. Wil Snyder of Eminence Ensemble is joining us, and he's also the co-founder and a teacher at CAiR, which stands for Colorado Artists in Recovery. How you doing, Wil?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, man. This is an amazing concept for a podcast, and very grateful to be a part of it, man.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. Well, would you like to first just tell us a little bit about what you do over there at CAiR and the story there?
Yeah, for sure. So I am 8 years sober and some change.
Nice.
And when I got sober in Denver this time, I got together with my friend Darren, who had an idea for basically like Phoenix Multisport, but for creatives, right? An outlet for people in recovery that can experience their creativity in a safe space, nurturing community, and we can grow together. And as a result of that, we can get connected to more people because, you know, like-minded individuals. So we put that idea out to an incubator called Cross Purpose, and they loved the idea. And we got our first round of funding. And Darren came to me and he was like, "Hey, man, I need a class. Like, can you teach a music class?" And I was like, "Absolutely, dude. Like, I love equating the concepts of music and recovery and life for that matter." And so we kind of just winged it from the very beginning. But it was just like a God moment, man. Like everything fit right into the right place. We had the right people come onto the board. We had the right amount of students come through. So the donors were all happy. It just kept on growing and growing. Fast forward 8 years in the future. Now Darren is leading the organization and we have classes for every kind of person. We've got dance classes. We've got poetry classes. We've got yoga, trauma-informed yoga. We've got songwriting. I teach one called Music and Recovery, speaking the language of music and recovery. I've gotten to teach that class about 7 times now. But long story short, it's just this very niche community that's a necessity in the recovery community. Because when I got sober, I was like, yeah, 12 steps, great, saved my ass. But like, what else is there? I want to create. I want to express myself. I want to be free. And I want to have that community as well. And that's what CAiR really gave, not only me and Darren, but everyone else who's been a part of it. And I think we served, I don't know, there was like, I think 25 individual classes this last month, which is just insane. That it all started with just this little idea of 2 guys getting together, being like, hey, let's maybe throw a music class together. And it's just expanded into this beautiful organization that's bigger than the both of us and, you know, all parts of its whole. I'm honored to be a part of it. It's the thing I'm probably the most proud of. Not probably. I am the most proud of in my musical career. And I've done some cool shit outside of that.
Well, that's awesome, man. I really love
Yeah,
that. And, you know, I got to say, you know, thank you from our community as well, because I know that
oh.
it can be it can be so difficult trying to get back into a creative kind of role when we're clean. You know,
Yeah,
I'm not a musician, but I was in a creative role. I used to work in the film industry for about 5 years out in
right. I
LA.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, like my whole creative process even was tied to different substances. You know, like if I was at my whiteboard coming up with shots, it was a little bit of mushroom tea. I thought that's the only way I could be creative, right?
Yeah,
If I
I get that.
was, yeah, you know, if I was out at some networking thing, it was Xanax, right? If I was on set directing, it was any kind of opiate, you know. So to step away from that and try to get back into some kind of creative role, um, essentially in a brand new life, you know, it can be very intimidating. And I know that it's the same for musicians too. So I appreciate that, because I think that having that outlet, having that place that we can go when we have nowhere else to turn, right? That beauty of music, and
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
important.
It really is so important. And I'm glad you touched on I was using a lot in my previous creativity before I got sober. It was kind of like I was a baby deer again. Like I didn't know what to do. And I was so raw and vulnerable. And now I was feeling my emotions. So having a community and having kind of even a teacher or a passionate individual leading a class, it just helps so many people. Like the greatest gift that I get is not like teaching the class and showing people music. That's great, but it's the light that comes on in those people's eyes, all different walks of life, and it happens in the most beautiful ways. So when Darren and I started the organization, we were kind of paving a path that wasn't paved really, and God was doing it for us more or less. But we realized that it was a market that needed to be met, and there was a need for a lot of people in recovery to expand their life and get back in touch with their creativity. And that's very scary sometimes on your own. So having that community has not only helped all of them, but very much helped my own creativity and recovery as a result of that.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and it does take everyone. And to our listeners, some of you may be thinking about the idea of recovery. Some might be early on. Some may have years under their belt. But
Yep.
wherever you are in that journey, just remember whatever that next hurdle is for you, there's always people who are here to help. If you want to get back into a creative space, reach out to this group. They do
Yeah.
music and lots of other interesting stuff. And, it's so important to have that because at the very end of the day, at least we have that to get out of bed for.
Mhm.
At least we have that to push us through those hard times. So it's,
Absolutely. It
yeah.
it feeds my soul. Just like, we're instructed to do certain things to keep our recovery afloat. I incorporate my creativity and like practicing into that now because I know it's so important for me and my spiritual growth. But yeah, for anybody that's out there listening, recovery is always an option, and we'd love to have you at Colorado Artists in Recovery. We also do a lot of like open mics and just hangouts and little events. We always partner with the Free Community or Phoenix Multisport, and we've thrown some great events. So if you're curious about recovery or curious about your creativity, feel free to reach out. I'm always a resource.
Yeah, and I'll have a link to their website in the description
Perfect.
as well. And
Yeah.
where do you guys usually host your classes and events?
Currently, it's at the Free Community over by DU. Um,
Nice.
and they hold different meetings there, but we do all of our classes there. And hopefully, we'll be getting a building in the near future. So we just have like a CAiR building. But right now, we want to put most of the funds into putting on cool classes for you guys.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. What's the most kind of unique or your favorite maybe out of your classes?
Well, I only teach mine, so I'm a little biased, but
Right.
mine is called Speaking the Language of Music and Recovery. And it's understanding music as a language using the piano. And I think that's really unique because most people teach music backwards. They teach you to regurgitate it off of a sheet. But if you like tried to learn Russian from somebody, are they going to teach you to speak it first or read it first as a kid? Like English as well. Like you
Mm,
spoke English first and then you learned to read. So why do people teach the universal language backwards? It didn't make any
mm,
sense to me. So I
yeah.
start with teaching them fundamentals and core concepts and how to explore into territories rather than just like read stuff off of a page or learn how to play songs. I'm teaching people how to get in touch, push through their emotions, and create some freedom stuff. Whether or not you're a pianist, it doesn't matter. Beginner to expert, multiple instruments, it's all welcome in my class. I would say outside of my class, though, one of my favorites is Ryan's class of poetry. Ryan's one of my homies, and he's such an amazing writer. And it's something that I'm not particularly adept at, so I got to take his class and learn a lot, right? We don't stand in a line, we sit in a circle, right? There's no hierarchy in CAiR. We're all together. We're all just trying to hang out and learn how to recover together. So when I got to take Ryan's class, it was so fun. It was a little uncomfortable for me too, because like I'm not the best with words. I can play pianos and instruments very well, but when it came to expressing that level of vulnerability, I'm so glad that I had that class and that teacher to take care of me. It was amazing.
I love that. And you know what? Speaking of vulnerability, I've been doing coaching work for coming up on 6 years here, and that is
Nice.
by far one of the biggest things that a lot of my guys go through, right? Because
That's interesting.
yeah, for the most part, we're raised to be men, tough and yeah, you like like you only express anger and blah blah blah, all that
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
and coming to a therapeutic place in our lives where we're restarting, we're getting into recovery, we're facing all of these things from our past. I would say vulnerability is one of the bigger ones that some
Absolutely.
people struggle with, and it's important for you listeners out there. It's really, really important, like we genuinely have to start a brand new life when we get into recovery. Now, that's not to say that there aren't good parts of our lives that we're going to keep and build and grow and all that stuff, but certainly, we have to try things different, right? Because
Yeah.
nothing changes if nothing changes.
The old proverb. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that you guys focus on that in of all things, a poetry class. How beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. Well, and to take that another direction, I try and be vulnerable with my recovery, and I wear it on my sleeve because I'm a full time musician. I'm gigging a lot. I'm touring with my band Eminence Ensemble. I'm playing in different projects here and there. And obviously, in the music community, just like many arts communities, drugs are very prolific, drugs and alcohol and addiction. And so I wear that on my sleeve, being very vulnerable, just in case it helps somebody, right? I'm so proud of my recovery because of it just gave me the life beyond my wildest dreams. At the very beginning, all I did was not want to drink myself to death, just barely. And then like it just kept on expanding and expanding. Um, it's truly a gift being in recovery and being able to be vulnerable with it and help people in the music community because some people don't know it's an option or maybe it still is a little stigmatized, but it's the stigma is going very much down, which I love. Um, but yeah, I love sharing my recovery and sharing all of my experiences, dark and good, dark and light.
Absolutely, and I feel like that's where that stigma is starting to go away because we're talking about it more. I think that it's been an issue for a long time, but now it's in a place where, we have to address it. And I think that, even just by having conversations with normies, right? Just to let them know what it's like, because you can't truly know unless you've experienced it. But
Mm-hmm.
I think at least kind of talking about some of those things um, can help to open a lot of minds to it and be curious instead of, scared or wanting to hide it or whatever. Because, I'll tell you, in my time in recovery, I've never met a single person who's had anything bad to say about me sharing that I'm in recovery. Matter of fact, it's been quite
True.
the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Agreed.
like I'll
Yeah.
talk to somebody and they're like, oh, yeah, Uncle Bob's in recovery or Uncle Joe should be, or, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, I get that.
Yeah. I
Oh,
think,
that's
I think maybe even a little too much sometimes. Like I remember I went into, I was pretty fresh out of treatment. And I went
sure.
into this gas station one day and the guy behind the counter was like, "How you doing, man? What's going on? How are you?" And I just come from a therapeutic community, so I was like, "Oh, dude, floodgates open, man. I'm fucked up.
Yeah.
I'm this. I'm that. I'm blah, blah, blah." And then the guy, big old eyes, and the guy says, "Oh, well, that'll be 350. Okay, get out of here." Like, kind of shut it down.
I do tend to overshare sometimes as well, but I like to lean on that side a little bit more because, and I'm not trying to like separate the sexes here, but men, when we were like taught and raised, we were taught not to express our emotions more or
Mm,
less, and that it was too feminine to do that or whatever. That's all bullshit. So
yeah,
like, I just want to express myself and show my emotions, maybe keep some stuff to myself now that I've learned, but I want to express that to try and help the next person down the line and be like, hey, it's okay to have these feelings. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to express your happiness and show joy. And like all of these things I got by just working a recovery program. And I never thought that that would be the case. I thought it was
mm,
just like, okay, I'm not going to use or drink anymore. Life might get boring. Quite the opposite. Life expanded, all my emotions came back, and I was living a full life. And I was able to, like, show this to other people, and it's a heartwarming thing to be able to be of service in that manner. So I'm very grateful for my
absolutely.
opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that's so important. Also to just show other options. I think,
True, true.
like I remember in my in my early recovery, I went to a lot of meetings. I found that useful for me.
Me
That was
too.
one of my tools. And I remember in the rooms they would talk about like the promises and all that stuff. And I remember back then I was a little pessimistic, but back then I was like, okay, if it happens, we'll see. And, and like sure enough it did, right? And I
Yeah,
think that like once you start to experience even just a little tiny gift of recovery, once that starts to open up just a little bit, then you're like, okay, let's go. So, for those people who are kind of on the fence or you're new in recovery or leaning back and forth, whatever it might be, just know that there is something better right around the corner. And
Uh,
I know that it's difficult. I know that it seems like things just, can stack upon one another and snowball out of control and all that. But just take one small thing at a time, just slow down, and just know that something better is right around the corner, because
mhm.
it does happen, and I think trying things in a different way is so important. And also, you don't have to give up things you love, you know.
Nope.
We can reclaim them for our recovery, for our life, like
Yeah,
music, for example. Um, so just keep that in mind. We're all here. We can't do it alone. So, yeah.
I love that message, man. It really is like I'm through my recovery, I've had a lot of external things change that have been wonderful and crazy. And like, but it's not about the external, all the cool shit that I've gotten to do. It's about that internal relationship that's changed. Like, I can walk through the
Mm.
world now with my head held high. I can be goofy and wear a dress if I want to out in public. And like, I don't, I'm not like terrified of being myself. For
Yeah.
those, I probably should mention, I'm pansexual and came out as that about a year and a half to 2 years ago, and that
Nice.
was a journey in itself. Anyway, what my point is recovery really helps change the internal, and it obviously affects the external as well. But I wouldn't trade that gift for anything. I used to hate myself so much and like
Mm.
drink myself into oblivion or try and be somebody else by drinking or using. And recovery has one like time and time again just whisked off the layers of the onion, or the artichoke rather. And I'm finding that like core myself, that freedom, that that ability to be part of a community and be myself without trying to people please across the board. Anyway, I can go on a freaking tangent with that too far, but recovery is where it's at, and
Absolutely.
we're both examples of that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that's beautiful. There's a lot of people, I think, who go through life lost, whether they're, in active addiction or not. I think
Whoa.
there's a lot of people who go through life lost and always looking for their purpose and looking for their this and their that. And um, it's just beautiful that, we've been able to find that kind of thing along with countless others in recovery.
Yep.
It's just, it's touching, really. It's recovery is by far the hardest yet most worthwhile thing I've ever done.
Agreed.
And, once you really get to that core that you're speaking of, there's a sense of freedom. We don't have to hide anymore. We don't have to keep track of what lie I told to this person on this date and blah, 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 blah. We don't have to worry about it.
Oh, yeah. Oh my
it's,
God.
it's just so much more free. And, we can be ourselves. We can show up fully. We can just live. We can just be happy. And, yeah, it's a gift.
Yep.
Yeah, it truly
I
is.
mean, it's crazy to me that like day one, I was so afraid of even showing my face in a meeting because I had so like no self esteem. Fast forward 7 years, and I'm playing in front of 10,000 people at Burning Man on the main stage with Pink
Mm.
Floyd saxophonists, and I'm just like, what the heck? Like I was dying in my bed 7 years ago and wasn't a professional musician like at all. And then recovery just kept on like inching me this way. Next thing I knew, some really cool stuff was happening, and like we said, both externally and internally. It's crazy.
I love that. I want to talk about that a little bit. So
Sure,
your
sure.
band, one of your bands, I should say, is called Eminence Ensemble, and if I
Yeah,
understood correctly, you're touring with Motet May 8th through 12th. Got
yeah. I
some
did
stuff coming up.
research. That's what's up, man. Yeah, so we're
Yeah.
going down south with the Motet. We've done a run with them down last year down in the south. We love those guys. Great band. If you're in the cities, Fayetteville, Oklahoma City, Dallas, Houston, or Austin, May 8th through 12th, we're playing those cities. And I'll send Charles the information if you guys are curious. But yeah, Eminence Ensemble is my band. We're a high-paced jam band with dives into pretty much every genre known to mankind, including classical, metal, reggae, rock, everything. Um, we have a lot of fun doing it, and they've been a band for about 10 years. And I got hired beginning of COVID. They switched their keyboard player, and I got hired, and I was like, "Oh, this is big boy territory." Like I'm playing with like the cats, which is really fun, and they turned into my best friends, man. and it's been just such a blessing. And I should mention, we just released an album called Inside Looking Out. It's the first album that I'm a part of with the new guitarist as well, Dylan Blight. Hope you guys enjoy that. It's a very, very wonderfully mixed album. Very proud of Dylan's work on that. And yeah, that's my little chiming my own bell for a second.
Oh, I love that, and I think that it's great just to see, our community just rising and accomplishing, and a lot of that stuff, because I think that it's really good to highlight that. Hence the name, right? Recovering out loud. I think
Yeah,
it's
let's
really good
go.
to show those things. Because sometimes we can get so caught up in the um, intervention. By the way, I hate that show. God, they ruined so much. Terrible.
Yeah, it's
But
it's rough for sure.
yeah, but you know what? We need another show, a new show called Recovering Out Loud. That's a TV show that goes into stuff. Anyway,
I would
L.A.
love that, man.
Talking to you.
But
Let's do
yeah,
it.
like to that point, I'm working on that with my therapy right now. I can, because of recovery, I've learned how to analyze my past, and I've learned how to look at my fears and my resentments and all of that. The other side of that coin is like looking at the character assets and looking at like how to enjoy things and how to share your wins with your friends and all this stuff. So I'm working on that right now. So thanks for giving me an outlet to do that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's always been so wild to me how expansive recovery can be. Like,
Right?
I, yeah, it's almost like once we're able to kind of see um, that house that we were sitting inside of that was on fire, right, in our active addiction, right,
Yeah,
and we could
that's
convince
fine.
ourselves, hey, I'm not on fire currently, I'm okay. Right, but once we could actually like get out of that house and get a little bit of time under our belt and turn around and look at it and say like, oh my god, look what I was just in, like it just so much opens from there because we can rebuild, we can start over, and that's the beauty of it. It's like a reset button, like once we have that solid foundation of recovery, it's like a house, right? We can start to build on top of it with other pillars, right? Like,
Agreed.
hey, I've always wanted to learn how to play the keyboard, for example, right? Let me go check CAiR out. Let me see what that pillar looks like. Oh,
That's
I've
what's up.
always wanted to, go back to school. This, that, whatever. It just allows for so many different things that we can reclaim and try in a new and lasting way, you
Yeah,
know?
I kind of think of recovery for me, to quote Carl Jung, the psychologist who kind of helped. He was like the spiritual father of AA, more or less. He talks about the second adulthood or second childhood, and that's what AA kind of was for me, or recovery. Because I did AA, but I also did refuge recovery and a few other things. Like I dabbled here and there, but the 12 steps are my foundation to build off of. Um, so, oops, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. What were we just talking about?
Carl Jung.
ADHD glitch.
And
Oh, Carl Jung. So
right.
yeah, the second childhood. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
So AA, that's basically what it was. I learned how to enjoy things again. I learned how to deal with my traumas, and I learned how to heal my relationships with my parents. And all this took work, mind you, but it was all so worth it. And Carl Jung talks about the second childhood being in your early 30s, more or less. But for me and a lot of people in recovery, that's when we like get back in touch with ourselves. We return to innocence, right? We return to our inner child. We do the shadow work. We do the inner child work. And then it's like you get to create your new life. Like you're saying, you're like,
Mm.
oh, I want a bit and piece of like, maybe I'll get back into PlayStation 5, or maybe I'll get back into like golfing with my friends, or dude, let's go throw axes, or whatever,
Yeah.
and you start to just discover the authentic version of yourself. It's a beautiful thing. And yeah.
I love that. Wow. Yeah. I'm gonna need to look that up. Any particular like book that comes to mind or for him?
Just any of Carl Jung's papers on the second childhood. I
Second
know that he
childhood.
has like a lot of different books. You can also just like listen to people talk about him, but it's an amazing concept. If you guys are curious about it, look up Carl Jung in the second childhood. Maybe it's called second adulthood. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's second childhood.
That's
But yeah, it
fascinating.
happens for everybody, is his saying, and like that's why recovery is so. It just like it's a superpower, and it helps. It helped me get through all of that. I had a lot of trauma and a lot of dark stuff happen in my past, um, and I've worked through it because of people like Carl and people that made the AA book. And who'd have ever thought that?
Right. Man, that's amazing. Well, I'm glad you're on your path and you're here, you know, because
Thanks, man.
yeah,
I'm glad I'm here
absolutely.
too. This is awesome.
Yeah. That's really interesting though. And you know, I feel like that you know, I've worked with guys in the past who have described it to me as recovery being a list of things that they can't do anymore, you know, and I've always thought that to be such a depressing way of looking at it. Like, no, it's not.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not that at all, I don't think, right? I mean, it's simply first off accepting the fact that A, we're never going to drink like gentlemen, nor are we going to bang H like gentlemen. It just doesn't work that way, right?
it's a great phrase.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Uh,
Um, yeah, but so it just doesn't work that way. So, I mean, like once we accept that part of it, the rest is just simply getting past barriers in our life, right? Whether it's trauma, like you're talking about, or whatever else it might be, you know, and coming to a place where we can start over, where we can grow, where we can look into this, you know, second adulthood, you know,
yeah,
and I mean, it's fascinating because it really does open up so much.
it does, and especially spiritually for me. That's the cornerstone of recovery for a lot of people as well. I never considered myself to be spiritual. I didn't even know the difference between spirituality and religion until I got into rehab, and then I learned that like you can kind of create your own concept of God and you can pick and choose. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to call it a salad bar, right? I'm going to pick and choose little things here and there, and I can make a different salad on any day, but whatever works for me today might need to be changed tomorrow, you know. And I'm open to all these different walks of life. And you know, I came from like a very heavy business family, like Fortune 500 kind of mentality, and I went to business school and president of the business fraternity. I did the whole deal. And I never really considered myself a spiritual person. And then when I got sober, everything changed. And it was the best gift ever. Like I've gotten to go to sweat lodges, I've gotten to talk to specialists and all different kinds of walks of life. And I never thought that I would enjoy any of that, right? But when that got presented to me, it was like God was like, hey man, I know that you were doing this alcohol thing, but here's this other thing. Try that. And like
Mm.
the more that I dove into the spiritual side of things, it opened my life, it opened my brain, it opened my soul. It's a beautiful process for anyone that's thinking of going through it. Very worth it. Like we've
Absolutely.
been saying repeatedly through this call, it's
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, man. I'm excited to hear more about your upcoming shows as well. Do you have Eminence Ensemble? Do you
Yeah,
guys have um you said you had a new album coming out as
yeah.
well?
Out. It's already out. It came out a few weeks ago. Inside
Nice.
Looking Out. It's available on all platforms. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can see some live videos from past shows.
Perfect.
Recently, 2 weeks ago, we just did Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd's album in its entirety with Scott Page from Pink Floyd. It was so cool, man. We
That's
did that at
awesome.
Burning Man a year ago, but we did it again in Cervantes a few weeks ago, and it was so magical, man. It was just such a cool experience. Um, but yeah, Eminence plays, like I said, on tour in May with the Motet, and then we're going to be touring the East Coast in October. But until then, follow us on socials. We put up a lot of goofy videos. We do a lot of cool music things, and we'd love to have you be part of our community.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll include those links as well in the bottom.
Worth
Yeah.
mentioning too, I want to shout out our bassist Zach. Zach is 10 years off of alcohol. And he went his own route. He didn't go the AA route that I did, but it worked for him. You know, just saying there's not a monopoly on recovery with AA. But it was so nice to like land into that band and be like, hey guys, I'm sober. All of them respected it, loved it, and even brag about it from time to time. And then Zach was like, hey, by the way, I got 2 more years than you. I was like, awesome. My people.
See, and what a culture there within your band that's not only creative but also supportive and uplifting. It's amazing, you know.
They're the
And
best humans I know. I love them all so much. It's
yeah,
hard for six guys to get along like really well too. But
right.
four of them grew up together, and then Dylan and I got implanted a few years ago, and Man, we've just grown as a team, whether we were doing Burning Man or different tours, even the tour during COVID, which was interesting, going through the Northeast in January. We've
Mhm.
grown together, and I can't wait to see where this rocket ship takes us.
I love that. And for the listeners out there, remember, there's a million different ways to recover,
True.
and no two people are going to recover the same, So try to be open minded, try to remain teachable, try some new things, kind of see what works for you,
Yeah,
Maybe some type of creative outlet could be perfect for you. So I urge you to take a look at these links down in the description and, you know, remain open to something new that maybe you didn't even think would fit, but it could be that key, So
it could be. Yep.
yeah.
I've seen it
Well, I'm
happen a million times. Well, not a million. I know it's happened a million times because of the numbers, but I've
right.
seen it happen quite frequently. Oh,
I
that's
love that.
beautiful.
Well, I'm really glad you were able to take some time and come talk to us today. It was a really good show, and I look forward to hearing more about CAiR and also your guys' tour and album and everything, man. I'm glad to see you're doing well.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. One last thing that I'd love to just chime in or to
Yeah.
mention, my mentor slash sponsor, whatever you want to call him, his name is Wes Hamill. He's an amazing songwriter. His wife Victoria Hamill, amazing songwriter. They got sober in LA 32 years ago, and they've helped run the Sweat Lodge community out here in Denver and get it growing. Again, we're not playing Native American, but we're honoring the traditions. If you want more about that, I can point you towards Wes's book. But Wes and I have been writing some songs recently, and hopefully we're getting placements in TV and film. So I just want to shout out Wes and my grand sponsor Paul, just for all the insights and all the love that they've showed me. And I can't do this on my own. I've had a team of people helping me because that's what we do. And so I just want to shout out that man, all both those men and that woman, because they're amazing human beings, and very grateful for them.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. That's beautiful, man. Well, thank you. I'm excited to learn more and continue the conversation.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Happy to come back anytime, my friend.
Yeah, I'd love to. Absolutely. Maybe we can have a post tour show.
That would be great. Maybe I'll even pull Zach over here with me.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Absolutely, would love to. Yeah, and I'll send you some links as well for anybody that wants to follow along on my journey or the band's journey or CAiR's journey.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'll have all that down in the description below. Well, thank you again for your time, man. Really appreciate you.
Dude, thanks for having me again. This is beautiful, and it's so good seeing you, man.
Yeah,
Recovering out
you too.
loud, and you're embodying it. Like,
Yeah,
that's what's up. For all
thank you.
those listeners out there, you guys got a great leader right here.
Oh, appreciate you. Thank you.
Of course, bro. Uh, here's to the next one.
Yes, absolutely. Until the next time. Yes.
Love y'all. Happy recovering.
Yeah, you too.